What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and up next we've got the Minnesota Golden Gophers on our schedule preview record projection series. Minnesota coming off of a little bit of a surprise year last year. Before we get to 2022, let's look back at 2021. Here was the schedule from 2021. Minnesota had to play Ohio State out of the East. They didn't have to play Michigan. They didn't have to play Michigan State, so that worked out pretty well. They did have to play Maryland, did have to play Indiana, and then again, Ohio State was a tough one there. And the non-conference, not too bad. Miami of Ohio, Colorado, Bowling Green. So this was a pretty favorable schedule. Let's look ahead now to 2022. Here is that schedule. Before we go game by game, let's look at who they play outside of the division. Of course, they're going to play every Big Ten West team. They'll play New Mexico State, Western Illinois, and Colorado. Those will be the non-conference games. Not very tough, really. Winnable games for sure. And then look at who they play out of the East. They'll play on the road at Michigan State, on the road at Penn State, and then Rutgers. So not a terrible draw. They don't have Michigan. They don't have Michigan State, but two tough road games of Michigan State and Penn State. They do get to play Rutgers. So, you know, it's not as good of a draw as they got last year, but still I don't think you can complain too much when you don't have to play Ohio State, don't have to play Michigan. Again, it's tough that they play two road games there, but that means you're going to get more home games in the division. So it kind of works out well, I guess, if you look at it like that. So they start off on Thursday night, September the 1st. They will play New Mexico State at home, and then it's Western Illinois on the 10th, Colorado on the 17th. So three non-conference games to start off the season. Three, again, very winnable games. Minnesota can get off to a great start, but then the schedule gets tougher. They will play Michigan State on September 24th. That'll be a road game. That'll be a tough game. Michigan State expected to be a top 15 team once again this season. Then after that, they'll play Purdue at home. Big game in the division. I know every year it seems like it's Iowa and Wisconsin. Those are the teams we talk about in the Big Ten West. Nebraska getting some love this year. But Minnesota and Purdue are kind of those sneaky teams that I think have a chance in the Big Ten West. And so that could be a huge game, maybe even an eliminator type game early in the season. First Saturday of October, Minnesota-Purdue. Circle that one. That is a huge game for both teams. Then they'll play Illinois after that. They'll get a bye week after Purdue before playing Illinois. Get a bye week before back-to-back road games. Illinois on the road, then Penn State on the road. Those will be challenges there. Then they get Rutgers at home. Go to the month of November. They'll go on the road to face Nebraska. That's another game that could be a huge one in the division. Northwestern on the 12th. Iowa on November 19th. And they'll close things out with Wisconsin on the road on November 26th. So if they are in the running, especially if they can beat Purdue, I mean, even if they lose to Michigan State and Penn State on the road, they're going to be in this discussion, in this race in the Big Ten West if they can beat Purdue. Again, that is a huge game. But then it comes down to that month of November. We did this with Nebraska, and it was the same situation with them. They had a bunch of big division games at the end of the season. Minnesota will play Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin in the month of November. So if they can beat Purdue, if they can stay in the race, they're going to have a great opportunity once they get to November. And if they can win these three division games, and I'm saying, and Northwestern's in there as well. We'll see how good they are. But I think the other three games are the big games. And if they can win two of those three games, or for sure three of those three games, then they're going to be in a great spot and have a great chance to win the Big Ten West. But again, it starts off with that game against Purdue. You lose that game, you lose to Michigan State, you lose to Penn State. That's already three losses. It's going to be tough. But if they can beat Purdue, then they'll have a chance, once they get to the month of November, to make a run at a Big Ten West championship. Here were the projections from 2021 for Minnesota. You see an 8-4 record. They absolutely beat the projections. Our projection was 6-6. My personal prediction was actually 7-5. So I was closer. I believed in this team. I didn't quite have them up to that 8-4 number, but I did have them at 7-5. The FBI had them just at 6.1 and 6.0, so right there at 6-6. Same thing as our projection, and then the over/under at 7. So again, this team definitely overperformed last year, especially if you consider losing Ibrahim early in the season. That was a pretty good year for Minnesota last year. I think that was definitely a successful season for them, and getting a bowl win in there as well. So we're looking back at the schedule here. This is the scale that we use to do this projection, games that are going to stay in white, those are basically your 50-50 games, 40 to 60%. Games where I think the spread will be 3 or 4 points or less. You're less than 20%, over 80% games. Those are games where I think the spread will be more than 2 touchdowns. 20 to 29, 71 to 80. Those are going to put it, double-digit spread, 10 to 14 points, kind of in that range. And then 30 to 39, 61 to 70. Those are games where I think the spread will be about a touchdown, 6, 7, 8 points, somewhere in that range. So we start with the easy wins. You got 2 of them: New Mexico State, Western Illinois. I don't really see Minnesota having any trouble in either one of these games. So you've got 2 wins you can pretty much count as guaranteed wins. And it's nice to have those games early in the year. They get a couple of easy games. Remember last year they had to play Ohio State right out of the gate. So a much easier start to the schedule. And then even after that, in week 3 with Colorado, that one's in the blue. I've got that one in the 71 to 80% range. I think Minnesota will be favored by, about 10 points in this game. Should be favored, especially playing at home. Colorado not expected to be all that great. So that's really your 3 easiest games for Minnesota, probably right there at the start of the season. Now we go to the games that Minnesota I think will be favored in, but it'll be a much smaller margin. Games where I think they'll be favored by about a touchdown, 6 or 7 points, kind of in that range. I think you've got Illinois, Rutgers, and Northwestern. All 3 of these teams kind of fit into this category. I know Illinois beat Minnesota last year, but just looking at the 2 teams, Minnesota should be the better team. I think they will be favored in that game. Rutgers and Northwestern both at home. Minnesota should be the better team. I think those will be, all 3 of these games probably will be closer games. It's not like I'm saying Minnesota is going to win by a lot. I'm not even predicting them to win. I'm just saying I think they will be favored by about a touchdown in these 3 games. So that gets you to 6 wins right there. If they're able to take care of business in these 6 games, that would get Minnesota to a bowl game, even if they don't win any of the other games. We do have a couple where I think they're going to be underdogs. That's Michigan State and Penn State. I think they will clearly be an underdog in both of these games by about a touchdown. Both on the road, both against good quality teams out of the Big Ten East. And so I think both of these games kind of fit in that same category. And then you've got Purdue, Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I view these 5 teams, Purdue, Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, really all in that same tier in the Big Ten West. I think any of these teams can win that division. If Iowa, Wisconsin, if they had better quarterback play, they would probably be above the rest of the pack. But with the struggles at quarterback, even though their overall rosters and teams might be a little bit better, I think Minnesota, Purdue, Nebraska probably going to have better quarterback play. And because of that, I think these 5 teams should be grouped together. And that means it's going to come down to those games between these teams to determine the division. And I think they're all really going to be 50-50 games in that, 4 points or less spread type range. Maybe Wisconsin on the road gets a little bit tougher for Minnesota, but it's close enough. And again, when I'm doing this for all these teams, I'm putting those 5 teams in the same tier. Every game will be a 50-50 game when those 5 teams play each other, and that is the case here for Minnesota. So when we average this all out, we count the greens as wins, the blue is at 75%, pink or purple is at 65%, the yellow is at 35%, and then the 50-50 games at 50%. We average all that out, and the projected record for Minnesota comes out to be 7-5. 7-5 for the Gophers. I think that's very possible. And going back to last year, remember, they beat the projection by 2 games. They beat my prediction by 1 game. And if they can beat the projection by 2 games again this year, a projection that is a little bit better, it was 6-6 last year, 7-5 this year. But if they can beat that by 2 games, Minnesota could be sitting there at 9-3, potentially with a chance to get to the Big Ten championship. I think they're definitely a contender. Like I said, it's a 5-team race in that Big Ten West, and you never know. Maybe Illinois or Northwestern will surprise. We could have a 6-team race, or even it could be really, really close where anybody has a chance. I think that's going to be really one of the more intriguing divisions in college football this year. But for Minnesota, projected record 7-5. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think better? Do you think worse? Give me your thoughts down in the comments below.